Welcome to Industry Night with me, Nikki Nellis, where we go behind the scenes with the people shaping how and why we eat and drink the way we do. Today, I am coming to you from one of the most beautiful waterfront spots in the city, the Point DC in Buzzard Point. I'm sitting right where the Potomac and the Anacostia rivers meet. This place feels a little bit like a coastal escape tucked into Southwest DC. Fire pits are blazing, boats are drifting by, oysters on ice. It is exactly where you want to be as the weather turns warm in Washington, D.C. Now, the point comes from the team behind Tony and Joe's Seafood Place, Nick's Riverside Grill, and Ivy City Tavern. These are people who understand exactly how this region likes to gather around food and drinks and then waterfront energy. Okay, now, speaking of things deeply rooted in this region, today's conversation is all about Maryland wine, because while a lot of people still overlook it, and you shouldn't, Maryland's wine story is one of the oldest and most fascinating in the country. The winemaking here in Maryland dates back to the 1600s, and today there are more than 100 wineries across the state producing everything from Cab Francs to Vidal Blancs and extraordinary meads. You heard that right. My guest today is helping shape this future of that industry while honoring a family legacy that stretches back more than 100 years. Rachel Loew Lipman is the head winemaker and director of operations at Loew Vineyards. It is Maryland's fourth oldest existing winery, the state's first kosher winery and meadery, and home to one of the longest continuous mead-making traditions in the world. Also, by the way, Rachel is one of the youngest head winemakers in Maryland. She is a fifth-generation mead maker and the granddaughter of Holocaust survivor William Loew, whose family's mead-making traditions began in Poland back in the 1800s before nearly being lost during the Holocaust. Now, Rachel is not only preserving the history, she's expanding it. She's doing award-winning wines and meads through education and storytelling, and now the launch of Maryland's first Star K certified mead. She's turning wine into memory and connection. So we are talking Maryland wine, Jewish history, family legacy, and what it means to carry a story forward through a bottle. Can't wait to talk to Rachel on today's Industry Night. So we're talking Maryland wine, mead, Jewish history, family legacy, and what it means to carry a story forward, but through a bottle. So I got Rachel. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for joining me today at Industry Night. So I know you grew up in the family business, but I kind of want to go back a little bit. Your family's mead-making roots go back to the 19th century in Poland. Can we talk about the history, the rich history of this?
Yeah, so my grandfather, on my maternal side, my grandfather's family started producing honey wine or mead in Lubos, Poland, which is now Lviv, Ukraine. And we have this really rich history of producing these products.
Is that a traditional products?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my grandfather's grandmother actually is the first person on record in my family to have owned a business of producing honey wine.
Okay.
And there were Polish traditional meads where they were using this very specific method of producing mead that we actually really don't see today. And she and her husband owned their own separate businesses. And then they all had...
This is like in the 1800s.
Yeah. And then
Wow.
I had 10 sons and like 2 daughters.
Sure.
And, you know, she was pregnant, I think, for like 15 years, something along the lines of that. And their kids were all involved in the business. But the interesting thing is, so we were making mead most likely way before that as well. It's just in 1867, the Habsburg Emperor at the time, the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Right.
They gave Jews, the privileges or the rights, civil rights, to own 100% of their own businesses and engage in commerce outside of their own community. So 3 years after that is when she actually opened up had a license for her own meadery.
Wow.
So we were most likely making mead for centuries before that.
but this is where it's
That's
documented.
where it's documented.
All right, and now I feel like we have to go back even further. What is mead? I think there's like this thought of like, you know, being in a Renaissance fair, carrying like a big silver or pewter cup of mead. What is mead?
So mead is a broad term. It's essentially a fermented beverage that's made with honeys.
Okay.
And so it can be as dry or as sweet or as low alcohol or as high alcohol as you'd like. So there's the Renaissance period where, you know, that's where a lot of the mead that is being consumed today, especially in the United States, because of that influence from the UK.
Right.
And then you have Viking meads. And actually, there's a huge category of mead that is not well seen in the market, and that's Polish mead. Okay. And it's because Jews were making mead in Poland. They were the majority of the producers up until World War II, and 90% of the Jewish population in Poland was murdered in the Holocaust.
Sure.
And so, therefore, mead essentially disappears from the market.
Okay. So, but the mead that your grandmother and grandfather were making in Poland,
Great
grandparents, was honey based.
Yeah.
But, you know, I hear honey and I think sweet sugar.
Yeah.
Right? So what were they making?
So they were making a whole range. Actually, a dry, semi-sweet, and sweet mead. They were kosher.
Okay.
And they, in Lviv, it was such an interesting area because they had this empire of honey wineries, but also, you know, it was in a big alcohol renaissance. You know, it was an industrial period. There were breweries, there were distilleries all across the street. I mean, there's a lot of production of alcohol in that area. But anyway, they were making a full range, and they were very pivotal in creating these regulations or quality control,
sort of like DOCG, right?
Totally.
In Italy.
Yep. Or like in France or the AFC.
Sure.
It's very similar. They would have, like my grandfather said, they used to have not wrestling fights, but they would have, you know, extreme debates on the quality and the qualifications for quality meads.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's jump forward.
Yeah.
Your grandparents,
My grandfather.
your grandfather escaped Poland?
He was a survivor. He was a Holocaust survivor. He survived a political prison, Auschwitz, Flossenburg concentration camp, and a death march.
Wow. And how did he wind up here in the States?
So there's a multitude of things, but after the war, right when he was liberated, the American army who liberated him really took a liking to him. And my grandfather spoke so many languages. He spoke like 8 languages.
Oh.
And he was fairly proficient in English, which wasn't as common, I think, at that point. And so the U.S. Army took him around, and he worked as a translator.
Oh.
So he made a lot of friends that way. That was before, I think, that he went to the sanatorium to recover from tuberculosis because he was extremely sick from all the, from all the camps and everything. And so essentially, that's
How
where
old is he at this
So
point?
when he was liberated, he was 19 years old.
Wow.
And he had lost all his family, most of his friends, was in poor health. So he really had to restore himself. And, you know, like a lot of Holocaust survivors, they really stuck very close to those memories of their life before the war.
Sure.
Because life was so precious and in an instant just taken away from them. So for him, when he came to the United States, he came first in 1949, went back to finish his gymnasium in Germany, and then came back again in, I think, 1954, and that's when it stuck. And he came to New Jersey, became an electrical engineer, eventually married my grandmother in Indianapolis. She's American. And they started life together, had 3 daughters, and he just always had this haunting of the sweet smell of mead fermenting in barrels. It's a beautiful aroma. I wish everyone could smell it because it's nostalgic. I mean, it reminds you of like tea on steroids.
Right.
And it's, I don't know, it's a beautiful aroma, and it compelled him to want to start a winery and a vineyard with my grandmother, and they did it
And what did
together.
your grandmother think?
She was like,
Because she grew up where? In Indianapolis?
she grew up actually Escanaba, Michigan.
Okay.
Yeah, Uper. She's from the Midwest, and you know, when she met my grandfather, I mean, they were in love and married within 6 months. And they really wanted to, and they developed a really beautiful life together. My grandfather, when my mom and her sisters were young, he would start home brewing.
Okay.
So they were in all the little crawl spaces. Like he was creating different recipes and really developed a passion for it. And it was more of a source of identity than a passion. But, she went along with it. She was like, if he wants to do it, sure. I mean, that's just how I.
All right, I'm going to take a pause because you're going to pop something. What are we popping first?
So I think this one we do last.
Okay.
We'll do Savi.
Okay, so talk to me about Savi.
So this is a mead. So this is a.
So just to be clear for people who are watching it on YouTube, you can see it looks just like a white wine. But if you're listening to this on the podcast, it looks just like a white wine. I mean, and
it acts like a white wine.
I mean, you really would not know visually that it was some other product than wine.
You know, the thing is that we have a hard time categorizing this because it's really a product that's dry.
Right.
And they drink like fine wines. But they definitely have honey in them. We have different versions of mead, because mead being that umbrella term that's anything that's fermented with honey and water.
Right.
I think one of the last times we met, I think I brought Malka, which was just honey and water.
Right.
And it's an old traditional Polish style mead from like the 1800s.
I feel like that is like what you would take if you were feeling sick.
Honestly, that's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I would. Right. Anytime you have allergies, just have a glass of
mead. That makes sense. I mean, because they tell you should drink, eat pollen, put a little sprinkle of local pollen on your morning oatmeal or whatever.
Yeah, or have a teaspoon a day, and it keeps the allergies away.
All right, so let's pour it. Tell me a little bit about it.
So this is a mead that is fermented with chenin blanc. So the honey and the grape juice.
So there is grapes.
Yep. So it ferments together. This is Savi, because Hebrew is Sava, and my grandfather would refer to his grandfather as Savi, which means my grandfather. It was in a way that was saying he was like
all mine,
and it was a form of reverence. But this is chenin blanc that's all grown in Maryland within middle season honey. So basically, the honey was about the color of what's in the glass.
Yeah.
This mead actually is with a lighter honey, so you can see how the difference in the color slightly.
Absolutely.
Very ever so slightly.
Yep.
The darker the honey, the darker the color of the product.
Makes sense.
So what we do with this is we put a QR code on the back of the label that someone can scan, and it links to a part of our website that explains who the person was. Because we don't have any photos or anything other than the dialogue and the memories that my grandfather shared, he named the meads in honor of people, and then we bring their memory to life through their personality, through the product, and also onto our website.
I love that. That's a really great story. Cheers.
Cheers.
What a wonderful way to kick this off. So at what point did it become a family business? I'm going to move this bottle of wine back here so it's not blocking you.
Yes. So in 1982, my grandparents found about 37 acres in Mount Airy.
Okay.
And they bought it so soon as I think they saw it, because they saw that there were 2 other wineries that were already established about 2 to 3 miles away from that property, and they thought, well, if they could do it, we could do it.
Right.
And had good slope. There's no flat land on at our property at all, which is great for grapes.
I was going to ask, like, I know he was an engineer, your grandfather, but did they know about the terroir and the rocky and all that? Was it as discussed?
They had a consultant to help pick out the property, but also, to make sure that the property, the land was good, was suitable for grapes. But he had been doing a lot of research beforehand.
Okay.
And my grandparents were really the early pioneers of the Maryland wine industry.
No kidding.
Especially for the laws and the regulations that we have today. It was really because of the original 12 wineries and my family's being part of that.
Well, so I have a question. Not just that were they planting grapes, But they had to create honey.
So we were buying honey.
Okay.
Everything that we source in general is Maryland grown, but my grandparents were working with, my understanding back then, Maryland sourced honey. We still are only sourcing Maryland sourced honey. But we do have, as of 2 years ago, I think 2 years ago, we established 32 hives in our property.
Okay.
And bringing it all full circle because a lot of customers ask, so where do you get your honey? Where are the bees? And
right.
we would say, oh, well, they're from the hobbyist down the road, which is just as good. But at the same time, there's nothing like having your own
honey.
Your own honey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So at what point were you bitten by this bug? Because you're a winemaker.
Yeah. So we spent a lot of time at the vineyard, growing up when I was young. I'm the oldest grandchild of 8.
Okay.
And I think that it was always going to be in the cards for me somehow. So
when I talk about myself as a child, I was obsessed with food.
Okay.
Like obsessed.
Yeah.
I was always hungry.
Yeah.
I always wanted to eat. I wanted to cook. Like I wanted food in my life in some way.
Yeah.
So when you were growing up and visiting your grandparents and going to the vineyard, do you know what I mean? Did you have that sense even then? Like, I'm not surprised I'm in food.
Yeah.
I'm surprised at what I'm doing in food,
Okay.
but I'm not surprised that food is a part of my profession.
I think for me, it was spending as much time with my grandparents as I could.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather, everyone in my family,
Sounds like it.
Our lives revolved around him. It still does, clearly. For me, I spent a lot of time with my grandfather. I wanted to spend as much time as I could with him. And I think wine just came along with that. And when I started getting into wine, I started being able to really absorbing more information than I felt like I ever could of any other subject.
Mm-hmm.
And, I started really the night before Passover, the night before Thanksgiving, I would spend the night at my grandparents' house, help my grandmother cook, and my grandfather would take me to the winery. And so I learned how to measure acids chromatography. Every Thanksgiving, I did that with him. So it became a part of like a routine. There are even different notes that my grandmother would make of just things that happened throughout the year. And as a child, my grandfather would take me into what we call the Bonanza building, which is just a barn,
right?
A full barn. And it's where his workbench was. And just that Rachel was sitting in the tractor watching Bill work on something.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was really more of the interest. And then wine just came, it was a natural thing that was parallel and then just became part of my life. And it's a huge part of my lifestyle and my identity. I don't think I think I'd be in wine somehow, but I think honestly, my grandfather's family had this long history in cheese. A lot of sun cheese because it's more smelly. But
delicious.
But delicious.
They do go together.
Yes, but like I don't want to be managing cows. I think if we were in some sort of other family business, I would be trying to do that. I'd be continuing.
So at what point in time does the business grow?
So really when I turned 18, that's when I was sitting with my high school guidance counselor, and she said, well, you have this strong attachment to your grandfather and to the vineyard. Let's see if we can work with that, because they don't talk to you about in high school about, they say biology.
Right.
Yeah, they say biology doctor.
Right.
Or they don't even talk about being a plant scientist.
Mm-hmm.
So once we figured out that could be a reality, then it just was like that and totally 100% on wine. But
did you go to the CIA?
No. So I went to University of Maryland.
Okay.
2 degrees, one's in plant science.
Mm-hmm.
The other's in communications. That was,
Right.
And then I have a winemaking certification from Washington State, and then worked a little bit in France. And I've been in every aspect of the industry, but it's really been a unique journey. Yeah.
And so at what point does this happen?
So in 2018, I started working for my grandparents full-time.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I was basically full-time working as a distributor for an importer distributor called Siema. Mm-hmm. And I had a territory, and I would always stop by my grandparents and, taste them on Austrian wines. And but we really, is in 2018, I started getting involved on a full-time basis.
And at that point, where were the wines available?
Just through what we could distribute.
Okay.
And then through the tasting room.
Through the tasting room.
Yeah, most of it's always been direct to consumer. And then COVID hit, and that's where we had to really figure out, where does this go from here?
Right.
Because things shut down, sales weren't coming in. My grandparents were paying a salary for like the first time.
Right.
For them, it was like a hobby retirement, thing. It wasn't necessarily where they had to rely on any of the income. And all of a sudden, someone's relying on the income, and we have to like figure out what we're going to be doing. And so at that point, we started doing a lot of research and trying to figure out, well, how can we turn this from something small into something viable?
Right.
And that's where things started to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Things started to change. Change is not easy. Still isn't easy.
I bet.
Especially when my grandparents were doing something a certain way for 38 years without any change, without any different equipment upgrades.
Right. But they also were, I don't want to call it was a business, but it wasn't the business that it is now.
Yeah.
And also Maryland wine has changed.
Maryland wine has changed a lot since,
when
the mid-2000s.
Right. But they started in the 70s when it was more hobbyist.
Yeah.
And yes, there were tasting rooms and things of that nature, but the maturity of the vines and the sort of xeno knowledge, if you will, probably wasn't there. Like, I always think back, like when I first came to the DC area, probably 30 years ago, I remember going to a Virginia wine festival.
Okay.
And there was some good wine.
Yeah.
But most of the wine was so high acid, the whites, right? Like so high acid. And it was because the wines were so young, and the vines were young. And people weren't yet playing with it in the way that they are now.
The climate was different.
Also true.
I mean, we're seeing hotter summers, and we're able to bring in, if my grandfather had started, let's say, with the way that our environment is now, the chemistry, the chemistry is so much different than what I can remember in 2010.
Okay, so let's talk about chemistry, because you and I were talking off air that this is a tough year.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what happened in the Mid-Atlantic, what it means for just the 2026 wines, not for all wine in general,
right?
But what it means and what the chemistry issues are.
So basically, on April 20th, we, having had a week prior to that, really beautiful, like 90-degree weather. I had a sunburn,
right?
And then all of a sudden, April 20th, the day before Earth Day, funny enough, we had a frost freeze warning across the Mid-Atlantic. So from New York all the way down to really the Appalachian area of North Carolina.
Okay.
And what happened was there was a frost freeze warning that would go down. It said it was going to go down to 29. Now, if you think about where a lot of grapes are grown, it's a lot of hilly areas. And so where the pockets would be, you would assume to be probably 29. And then the higher areas would be maybe 31 or 32, which is kind of out of it's at a risk level, but not necessarily a devastation level for frost or freeze. And what happened was, instead of the 29 degrees, we had stagnant air at 23.5, which...
What does that mean, stagnant air?
Stagnant air is there's no wind.
There's nothing moving it.
So if you think about kinetic energy, where things are moving and things are dynamic,
right?
They're creating heat. The leaves are creating heat. Because we had the heat before it, and we had a lot of growth, we had bud break, which means that the leaves were coming out, the buds were coming out, and we had, a good couple inches, maybe up to 3 inches of growth. And that means we have primary fruit, and the primary fruit produces the best crop. You have one shot at that.
Okay.
Secondary, it provides fruit, let's say 50% of the time. It will provide fruit, but maybe not the highest quality. Tertiary buds, each primary has a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary. The tertiary produces no fruit. But growth. What happened was we had so much heat, and we had then stagnant air. It went down to 23.5 degrees, which is usually you see a forecast and you don't expect 7 degrees below, like
The forecast, right?
7 degrees below for several hours. And that decimated most of the crop across the mid-Atlantic.
Okay.
It didn't just affect grapes, it actually affected apples and peaches as well. For us, we hit 23.5. And so on Monday...
And I have a stupid question.
Yeah.
I know nothing about this. Can you cover the vines? Like, can you warm... Like, is there something to be done?
There are things you can do, but it only helps it by 2 or 3 degrees.
Okay.
And because it went down to 23.5, even if you did it by 2 or 3, if you did whatever you could to help by 2 to 3 degrees, that's still total, total devastation right there. So there's really nothing that could have been done unless you invested in drip irrigation, which we don't need to because we're dry farmers because of the fact that we get hurricanes and we get plenty of rain,
Right.
typically. And so that's hundreds of thousands of dollars that you'd have to fork out for one day,
Right.
to save a crop that's not worth that much. I mean, not worth the amount of hundreds of thousands of dollars for that one day, because then that price of the bottle, anyway, would really increase. So, yeah, so we lost everything for the most part, and most vineyards across the Mid-Atlantic lost.
So what does that mean? Like, you lost, there's no grapes.
No grapes for, I mean, little to no, as in, for us, we're not making wine this year because we don't have access to any fruit this year. There are some vineyards that have come out with maybe 40 or 50% less fruit than they typically would be able to get, depending on where their location was. If they're higher up, higher elevation, or just sometimes it's just a random spot that they just happen to luck out, which that's amazing. But for the most part, the majority of like the state we produce about 1,000 acres of grapes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the last time I saw the report of like, there's a survey that went out, I mean, it was over 600 acres that was totally devastated.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for a small winemaker like you?
Well, we're not making any wine this year.
Right.
We can make mead, which, thank God we have the ability of making different products, and we have a lot that comes out of that. But we can't make mead with grapes like this one. So, when you're in this industry, you've been grown up in this industry, I've learned enough, and my grandfather's granddaughter, so he always would tell me to anticipate. Mm-hmm. So there are certain varieties that I was told already, we have this fruit for you this year, but we might not have it for you next year. So I worked with as much as I could of that variety.
Okay.
And so I kind of stocked up. And so I have enough red wine to last us through till our 2027 vintage would be released.
Mm-hmm.
But white wine is a little dicey, but we have enough needs. So
you feel like you have it.
I feel like we're just in a perfect spot.
So let's talk about the grapes that are planted now. When you joined the vineyard, what was planted and how have you changed the footprint of it?
So a lot of it was kind of like an experimental vineyard in some aspects. My grandmother would disagree, but we had 8 to 10 varieties in 4 acres, which is kind of crazy.
Okay.
So you'd have small amounts of one variety, larger amounts of another one.
And where were the vines from?
The vines, all from different nurseries throughout.
Okay.
Yeah. And so basically, and there were some vines that were really older and some that were younger. So what we decided to do was the varieties that worked so well for us, we ripped out the ones that didn't, and then we replanted. So right now we're still in a revitalization period because another long story, but we were hit by an herbicide drift. So it's all farming. It's fine. It's not fine, but it's fine. Yeah.
I mean, it is so important to remember
that
winemaking is an agricultural product.
Totally.
You are farming.
We're farming a luxury product.
Yes.
So I think like you see something that's in a glass and you think of something that it's not something that you're going to have like strawberries. And you're not going to go to a grocery store and get, bottle of wine maybe every day. Maybe you do. That'd be amazing. But, you go to get strawberries. Same amount of effort that probably goes into farming strawberries as it does to farming grapes. But making wine is a whole other value-added product.
Right, because you don't just pick the fruit and eat it.
We have to process
You have
it.
to process it. And sometimes that process can be multiple years.
Totally. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, like, for example, this one takes 9 months to get to out of the barrel. And then by the time we're releasing it is sometimes a year and a half afterwards. For reds, it could be up to 3 years.
Okay.
So any of this frost that we're seeing in 2026 is not going to affect the market until January of 2027 to probably January of 2030.
Mm-hmm.
Because it takes 1 to 3 years to get that out.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the wines that are on this table.
Okay.
And the releases that you have, because you have a rosé. I'd love to learn a little bit more about the products. And then I want to get into kosher winemaking.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned in the beginning that what your great-grandparents made in Poland was kosher.
Right.
But I wonder if they had to go through the same.
They did.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. There's articles actually that prove it
Okay.
from like the 1910s of all of the
Of how strict and what they had to
just
do.
the different things of like certain even rabbis not liking the other hechsher and the things that they had to go through to get a hechsher. And which hechsher being a certification for those who don't know.
Yeah, I think we should start there.
Yeah.
Let's start with pick a wine.
Okay.
Let's pour it. And then let's talk about why you decided to do something kosher.
Yeah.
And is it a value add? Is it what it means? And then what you had to do physically at the winery to make that happen.
Okay. Yeah.
So let's do it. What are you pouring me now?
So we're going to have a sparkling red.
Okay.
This is called Mazal, which, anyone who knows Mazel Tov, it's Mazal in Hebrew means luck. We have a festive series of 3 different sparklings, a white, red, and a rosé. And we did that on purpose because, well, my goal was because my brain is usually quite serious and I usually am more inclined to go serious about really almost a lot of different topics.
Right.
That I wanted to have something fun. And so we decided to make a series of sparkling wines. Did that nicely. And so this is a dry sparkling red.
Beautiful.
It's
like a Lambrusco.
It's like a dry Lambrusco, but on steroids because it's made out of Barbera. It's actually out of a Carbonic called a Nouveau. And
so it's a Barbera, like an Italian Barbera?
It's like Beaujolais, the Barbera, and sparkling all in one.
Wow.
So this is my ultimate charcuterie wine, which is why I wanted to make it. I had this idea.
Oh, I could see it with really like peppery salamis. I totally see that. And it's really dry. Sometimes with Lambrusco, which I know this is not one, I feel like it's going to stain my teeth red.
Oh, yeah. Well,
you know what I mean? Because it's like it's so dark.
Right.
But this is light, really light.
Yeah, so this is out of a carbonic fermentation, which is usually like a Beaujolais style. Okay. But made with Barbera, also grown in Maryland. And there was one year that I made this Nouveau. We're very well known for our carbonic fermentations for our Nouveaux.
Can you say what carbonic fermentation
is?
I feel like you're throwing out all these terms, and I don't want people to be like, I don't know what she's talking about.
So carbonic fermentation is the way that you make red wine is you crush the fruit, and so the juice, the stem, the juice, the skins, and the seeds all ferment together. And it's an aerobic fermentation, as in you're introducing oxygen. Okay. And you're allowing the
stems are in there too.
They can be. Okay. They can be. Carbonic is where each individual berry, which grapes are true berries, goes through a fermentation. And so essentially it looks like a bunch of blueberries in a vat or full clusters. And the carbon dioxide, because the way that you convert sugar into alcohol is it releases carbon dioxide. Right. It releases carbon dioxide onto the berry itself, and it basically the berry explodes on itself. Okay. It's a really fun style fermentation. So it goes like this. It goes like this. It kind of
collapses in.
It collapses in.
It doesn't burst.
It can. It just depends on the skin thickness. Okay. But it's a really fun style fermentation. I learned how to make it with my grandfather when I was a teenager. We're probably one of the only ones on the East Coast who are doing it because they're very tricky fermentations. Okay. They're the most likely to fail. I have not had that. Like,
Knock on wood. Okay.
you
You have
I get
enough
nervous.
issues. Come on.
The amount of expletives I'm kind of yelling or telling myself while we're in the middle of harvest.
Can you? This is going to sound like a strange question. Can you hear it?
You can't hear it. Actually, that's not true. You can hear it. So if you open up the lid and you put your ear in, you can hear the little bit of the sizzling, and that's just the fermentation going. But they're very hard fermentations. I mean, I was making them in like drums, probably up to my rib cage or so. So they're not massive size volumes.
Right.
And now we're doing them in two 450-gallon vats, which are about 8 feet tall.
Okay, I'm going to introduce you to Brent Kroll. Do you know him? Okay, so he has a fantastic wine bar called Maxwell.
Oh, I've heard of it.
In Shaw.
So they've carried our wines before.
Okay, I was going to say, he does Lambrusco Week.
Oh, he would love this.
This is perfect for him.
He would totally love it.
I'm going to make that introduction.
Yeah,
so cheers on that.
Cheers.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about the whole koshering of this thing. What's happening here?
Yeah, so in 2025, we received a grant from, so our wineries in Frederick County, Maryland. We received a grant called the Agricultural Innovation Grant, and that allowed us to purchase a steam generator and a few other pieces of equipment to allow our winery to go kosher.
Okay, and why was that important to you?
So it happened, I think I first started looking into it in about 2021, 2021, because we had an article that came out that essentially, as my brother said, went Jewish viral. Right. And we got calls, emails, everything, like 3 to 5 times a day for months, asking if we made kosher products. The answer was no, but there's no objectionable ingredients. I had a whole spiel. And then I would get either a lecture or some sort of question saying, or plea, please make your products kosher.
Kosher. And you can't really do that halfway, can you? I mean, could you do like half kosher, half not?
Technically, kind of.
Okay.
So we're now operating under 2 different certifications. A certification is also known as a hechsher. Okay. And so essentially, we're doing 2 certifications where anything that's made with grapes, even this one, is under, from the 2025 vintage on, is under conservative hechsher. So there's a rabbi.
What does that mean? Okay.
So there's a rabbi that who runs a conservative synagogue in Frederick, who's actually where my grandmother belongs. He is supervising our certification. The reason why we have to do 2 is because we have non-Jewish employees, and I don't really have an intention of being more religious than I actually already am.
Right.
And there are certain restrictions along with lifestyle. So we are operating under a conservative hechsher. We are essentially... So all the
I don't really know.
So basically, all the ingredients that we were making wine or mead with before was already kosher.
Okay.
Everything was already kosher, besides the fact that I was working on Saturdays, and in terms of...
So you can't work on Saturdays if you're kosher?
The winery is not in operation on Shabbat or non-working holidays.
Okay, so does that mean you can't open up your tasting room?
Our tasting room is open. So if we were under the Orthodox supervision,
that would be the case.
We would not be able to be open on Shabbat.
Okay.
But since the conservative hechsher is viewing the winery separate as a separate business than the tasting room,
yes,
then the tasting room can be open, but there's no touching of the wine or the mead on Shabbat.
As far as processing.
So which has allowed me, as someone who's been working 6-7 days a week since I was 20, since I was 21, 22, that forced me
to take a day
which
off. Is the actual reason for Shabbat.
Exactly.
Right?
So my family, we all joke that going kosher has actually helped my lifestyle.
Slowed you down.
It slowed me down, even though it was an added project to an extent.
Right.
So,
so I have a question. So when I grew up Reform. My grandparents were modern Orthodox.
Okay.
She certainly ate shrimp fried rice out, that's for sure, but nothing inside. But when I was in Israel on a trip, it was with a bunch of people in the food space. And one day they sent us to one of the markets where we all had to go shopping, and then cook at a school, like we did like a Top Chef competition kind of thing. And we,
cool.
you know, it was a getting to know you, an icebreaker kind of partnership. Anyway, when we went to the market, because of where we were cooking, we could only buy kosher herbs. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, first of all, I was one of the few Jewish people in this group. So people were like, what does that mean? I'm like, I have no idea. What does that mean? Because of the bugs. So is that something you had to deal with? Because certain bugs are not kosher? I don't even understand it.
You know, we don't want any, when we're making wine, we don't want what we call mogs, material other than grapes anyway.
Right.
And so for things to be kosher, you don't want to have the material other than, which would be, you know, the insect issue. It's also, when you think about it, it's funny because bees themselves are not kosher, but honey is. So
that's funny.
Yeah, so that's how I usually think about with the whole insect.
So what do you think that is about bees? I'm just curious. Do you think it's because they're, well, I know they're an insect, but is that because what they do is so important?
Well, I mean, you wouldn't eat a bee anyway, but then the honey itself is being a byproduct of a bee.
Right.
Then, yeah. So
the rules are so arbitrary.
They're kind of funny and fun to learn about. I've learned so much in this sphere because of it. But yeah, so there's no cellar operations on Shabbat.
Okay.
A non-working holiday. So Shavuot is next.
Oh my God, September must be the worst for you because when my kids went to the JCC for preschool, I was like, the school's never open.
Well, so my first harvest as a kosher winery was this past September, October.
Right.
So it was the easiest harvest I have ever experienced my whole entire life.
Because you were closed all the time.
Because we were not allowed to process on any of the Fridays.
Right.
Because we wanted to make sure that we were done in time before Shabbat because we have to do 90. I think it's about 90 minutes before Shabbat, sundown, and then I think it's 30 minutes after, vice versa. But we just didn't process.
Right.
And then Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and then there's the first 2 days of Sukkot, which is actually a harvest holiday.
Right.
So you would think that you're supposed to harvest on the harvest holiday, but
you're supposed to build a shack.
Yeah. So, but the first 2 days you're not allowed to do any cellar operations. So it was really interesting, and the whole other aspect of going kosher is we had to sterilize all of our equipment, and which meant through using the steam generator.
Okay.
And
is that something you have to do regularly now?
So kind of. So right now we have non-kosher wine in the winery. We have conservative kosher wine in the winery, and then we have the Star K meads that are behind chicken wire actually, and the barrels are stapled shut.
So what does the Star K mean?
That's an Orthodox texture.
Okay.
So all of our products without grapes. So our honey wines that are just made with honey and water. And then our honey wines that are meads, really, that are made with apples and with honey. Great for Rosh Hashanah.
Great for Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah, we just bottled it, waiting on for the label to finish so we can label it and get it to market.
Great.
But that is also, what's
the ABV of that?
They're like normal white wines, like 12.8, 12.9. Okay. Yeah. So, and they're dry.
Okay.
So they're really interesting. But anyway, yeah, so
I also like it for cooking.
Yeah, they pair well with desserts. They also are good with foods.
Like I just sort of think like if I was making like a chicken dish, I just have a lot of ideas. So
even with latkes, like, any sort of, the fried potato, that the meats do really well with that.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, right now we have 3 different productions happening at the same time. So we have wine and non-kosher wine in tanks. Once that gets out of the winery, then we'll be under 2 different, we'll be fully kosher and under 2 separate certifications. So the rabbi actually came yesterday so we could kosher more barrels so I could get more wine.
So every time barrels come in, do you have to kosher them?
If they're new, we don't have to kosher them. But
if you get like ones from other winemakers or like a sherry or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. We had non-kosher wine in some of the barrels that we transferred into a non-kosher tank. So the rabbi came yesterday to kosher those barrels so that we could put the kosher wine in the kosher barrels. And so then we could then do a little Tetris and so we can start getting things bottled soon.
So I have to ask, Do you think the juice is worth the squeeze on this?
We'll see. I think it's given us some good PR so far. We only have one product available at the moment, which is the still version of this.
Right.
And I think that being the first and only kosher winery in the state of Maryland is going to be...
It's significant.
It's significant. And you know what? It brings us full circle. So we are entirely doing everything that's aligned with our history, because we did that, back in the early 1900s, late 1800s. And I think that to me is more the juice being worth the squeeze, more than the fact that if the market doesn't respond, but it should, because they're really high quality products.
Right. Well, let's talk about what that means for high quality products. Like, where do you think Maryland winemaking is right now? Like, if we look at the other products you have here, let's take mead out of it, but just talk about the wines. Where do you think it is right now?
I think we're seeing some of the best Maryland wines coming out of Maryland, not just Maryland wines, the best wines coming out of Maryland now than we have 40, 50 years ago.
Okay.
And I think a lot of it has to do with, we're now generational farmers. A lot of them were first generation, and I think the first generation is kind of the guinea pig.
Sure.
And then you have the second generation, you learn from the first generation, but now we're at that third generation in terms of, I'm a third generation Maryland, fifth generation overall. My friends that are 3 miles from me, she's a third generation, and we're pushing boundaries.
But do you think it also has to do with, like your grandparents who started the vineyard as a hobby? I mean, sure, they sold the wine, but they didn't see it as the business model that it is today. I mean, there are really good vineyards in Maryland that are producing incredible wines in a beautiful tasting rooms, no different than Virginia or California or any of those places. Do you think that your generation sees that it's a business?
I think that we see it as a livelihood, and I think that's something that when your livelihood is at stake, you have to push the boundaries and you have to find ways. Especially COVID, I think, really changed a lot. I think we had, the 2010s of the boom of the Maryland wine industry.
Yeah.
But when you have COVID, where people are all going into their backyards to see what wines are available compared to, we had a lot of customers that said, well, because of COVID, we had to cancel our trip to Napa or cancel our trip to France or to Spain.
Right.
So we decided to see what was in our backyard. And that, I think, the interest of local wine really propelled itself.
Interesting.
And from there, I've seen a lot of press being done. And it was probably all in the back burner. Maybe it just happened to be at the same timing it came out. But I've seen a lot more interest of people seeing that they're starting to join wine clubs in their backyard, where before it was only Napa.
Yes.
And Sonoma.
Well, and also what I see is with the openings of all, having the tasting rooms, I think is really one of the big things, in recognizing that people love to spend a day, and whether you have music or a food truck or, or a chef or whatever it is, there's so many people now offering a way to spend the day at the vineyard. I can think of one I went to recently, and I mean, people are just there with their kids.
Right.
And the little ones are just running around, and people are there with their friends, and they're sitting and having a glass of wine and really having a day.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm only talking about 20 years ago, but when my youngest kids were that age, we did not do that. Right. I mean, it really wasn't available in that way.
Yeah, the laws and the regulations were much different. Like, I can remember my grandmother, when we first started, the actual tasting room. I mean, I can't recall when we first built it.
Right.
I know when we built it, but I was young. And I remember that she would talk about the time period where people would come in and they would only be able to do tasting standing up at a bar.
Right. You couldn't sit.
There was no seating because they weren't allowed to sit.
Right.
Because they didn't want people to
sit
and
the Puritan rules.
They didn't want them to linger. So all of a sudden, there's some, laws and regulations that pass, and you start to see the boom in the industry. And so all of a sudden there's seating. And for us, we're like, we have no other seating besides people standing, maybe one or two stools. And so we've had, whenever there's something new, you have to just kind of get with the times. And
Right.
it's been that's, I think, the hardest part of having a business and running a business is which of those changes you hold on to, and which ones you kind of stick to your own. Our biggest thing is we have some small seating, but we really focus on guided tastings where we share the history.
Okay.
And for us, the history in the product is like the most important. And now we have some snacks and stuff like that, but we have some beautiful grounds. There on Mother's Day, there were kids, I saw them do a backhand spring down the hill. I was thinking, okay. But did a great job.
Right.
So it's I think the other thing too is that there's so many different wineries out there, and there's so many different business models and so many different focuses, whether it's the quality of the wine or the atmosphere. Sometimes it's both. Sometimes it's just like festivals, so.
Right. I totally get that. Well, you're also really into education.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about your education and advocacy and what you're doing out there?
So I'm as a grandchild of a Holocaust survivor. I identify, I guess, as a 3G, which is a grandchild, grandchild of a Holocaust survivor. So I help run an organization called 3GDC, which is an affiliate of a parent organization called Living Links, which is in partnership with the Shoah Foundation. It's actually founded by my Aunt Jen. Okay. Jennifer Mendelsohn, who she was one of the original staff of the Holocaust Museum in DC.
All right.
So you can see that my whole family's orientation is really about wine and the Holocaust in that sense. And we, as the speakers, 3G speakers, we have trained speakers that go through a whole certification process, which I did. Right. And we go into schools and to universities, and we share a grandparent's story, which is really powerful in the sense that we share a grandparent's story of survival of the Holocaust, not just of their actual story of survival, but their life before, because there were beautiful memories of their lives in Europe before. Sure. When things started to turn, their survival of the Holocaust and how amazing their lives turned out. So I think that just shows the resilience and the perseverance and the strength that they had. And it really resonates, and especially as grandchildren, it's a different relationship with, the survivor and the 2G, they're with the parent-child relationship, but the grandparent and grandchild relationship is really unique because I guess it's the 1 degree of separation, but also it's it's an innocent relationship.
It is, but if you look at generational trauma and how it is passed down, there are those that if we can all look at our families' histories and see strains of how they were passed down, and some of it passed down with that trauma still intact, and some without.
And resilience.
Right.
So I think the one thing that in my family we really focused on was more than just, it's really been the intergenerational resilience. Because my grandfather was so strong. Like, he never talked about as much the trauma. He always talked about the things he had to go through, and then we look at him, and he was like this well-kept man who had high standards, who lived till 96 and was like fixing a pump with electrical, like even 4 months prior to him passing away. That is like such the resilience. But there is the trauma, of course. And, I think that's there's a strain, I think, with the parent-child relationship as compared to the grandparent-grandchild relationship.
Well, I think because, and I can't speak for your family, but as a child of a Holocaust survivor, how do you do better? Yeah. You know what I mean? How do you realize their dreams? Right. You know what I mean? I think it's a burden.
Well, and you think about when survivors started sharing their stories.
Right, because they didn't all start sharing them right away.
My grandfather didn't really start sharing it. He didn't share it publicly. He shared it with the Holocaust Museum in 1995.
Okay.
So if you think about it, I was born in 1992.
Right.
So that's around the time, the late 80s, early 90s, is when really survivors started talking about what happened to them. There was no therapy. There was no, those type of traumatic psychological help was not
Well,
really
I
there.
also feel like there was a pop culture shift in the 80s with movies, books, Sophie's Choice, things of that nature that were sort of changing the conversation, because in the 60s and 70s, people were like, they didn't want to talk about it,
Right.
So I think that because if you look at like a Steven Spielberg or some of the other writers and people who sort of push that pendulum swing when it comes to culture, they wanted to talk about it.
Totally.
So that changes things.
It totally changes things. And, I think that is where they start talking about, well, what was your life like before the war?
Right.
And, if they grew up in a shtetl, my grandfather did not. Grew up in this, beautiful grand flat that was built in 1910 with herringbone floors, wrought iron staircase. I mean, it's beautiful that that building still exists. But like that was his memories of really this noble kind of life. And he was able to share that and then go into the story of his survival, which really gives us almost fantastical notion of what his life was like. So I always had this really kind of thought process that my family was almost royal. And that was taken away. Kind of like the Romanovs, but not.
Right. But I understand.
It just kind of felt like that. Just how he would describe his family, and he just would paint this beautiful picture without even having a photo. And I think every time I hear a different survivor's story, especially through the grandchildren, you get that notion of, this is what my grandfather was like when he was a child. They were pharmacists, they were doctors, they were lawyers, they had businesses, they made, they were shoemakers. They had
Right, it's not all Fiddler on the Roof.
Not all Fiddler on the Roof.
Right.
Yeah.
Understood.
Some of it is. And
Yeah,
a
of
lot
course.
it isn't.
Not everybody. It's not monolith.
Exactly.
And that is amazing that you get to share their stories. It must be very impactful. Is there pushback right now?
What do you mean by pushback?
I don't know, just because everything that's going on right now. I mean, I don't think Israel and telling the story of the Holocaust go hand in hand, but there are people who cannot separate them.
We have not seen any sort of anti-Semitism at the winery. I mean, of course, there are some, always concerns of if we're publicly Jewish, if there's something that would happen. But, my grandfather always said you should always be proud of who you are, never apologize for telling the truth. So for us, our whole history is interconnected with what we do. It's a tough history that we have in terms of with the Holocaust, but for us, I haven't seen any pushback. Frederick County is very friendly, and so I haven't seen anything.
Good.
I hope I don't.
I hope you don't.
Yeah.
Nor should you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for us, we're just a family that makes wine and wants to share a story, and we want mead, and
we're can't forget the mead.
Can't forget the mead, and we're very interconnected with what we do, and of course, it's important that we keep on going, and we're who we are.
Well, what I love is that you respect the past while looking towards the future, and I just think that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions, just a little rapid fire while we sip the last of this because it's so yummy. Okay. At the end of the day, you go home, long day in the vineyard. What are we drinking?
So I have to say I love a dirty martini, as dirty as possible.
Okay. So lots of olive juice.
So I used to joke going to a restaurant that when I asked for a dirty martini, I want it as dirty as a sewer.
So here's what I also know.
Yeah.
Because I just did a reel on martinis and
Oh,
all
I
the new
think I
martinis.
saw that.
No, it's not up yet.
Oh.
You will see it tomorrow.
Okay.
It's called Filthy.
Oh, okay.
It's a filthy martini. So there you go.
Okay, I'm gonna use that.
Filthy.
Well, I saw you at a martini. I think a lemon twist. Or you had olives on the side. You had olives on the side.
It was a photo. Yes.
It was a photo. Yeah. Okay.
That's at Lucy. Yeah. You did see that. That's at Lucy Bar. But all these restaurants are doing martini menus. And so there's a whole bunch of happy hour martinis, like golden hour martinis. And then there's also all these like new sexy martinis.
Okay.
So I'll share and
That'd
you'll
be
know.
great, yeah.
Okay, let's see. Let's give you one more. What bottle tells your family story the best? What's your favorite?
That's hard.
I know, because they're all so good.
Yeah, you know, they all have different rhymes and reasons.
Pick
I
one.
would say that I would say the Wolf,
Okay.
which is the Cabernet Sauvignon. I'd say that one describes our family history the most in terms of our history in Maryland and the United States. My grandfather's birth name was Wolf, and those who knew my grandfather actually knew him as Vielik in Europe, but my grandfather used to make this really beautiful Cabernet Sauvignon. We drink it for every holiday together, the vintage ones from like the 90s and late 80s.
Wow.
And people used to come up to me in the industry and say, your grandfather made the best Cabernet Sauvignon I ever had from Maryland.
Wow.
And so for me, it was actually ironic that the year he passed away, that the only thing I could make in honor of him would be a Cabernet Sauvignon. I had no access to that fruit before. And then a grower calls me a month after he passed away saying, I have extra Cabernet Sauvignon. I had never even asked for it.
Okay.
And I thought, like, it's kismet. It's like meant to be that I make this for him. And that is a wine that's in honor of how I knew him.
I love that. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Great. I'm so appreciative of you sharing your story.
Thank you.
Great. What an incredible conversation. Rachel Loew Lipman of Loew Vineyards is proof that wine can be so much more than what's in the glass. It can carry memory, it can preserve culture, it can connect generations. And in Rachel's hands, that's exactly what's happening. This is the kind of conversation I absolutely love having on Industry Night. A huge thank you to our host here today at the Point DC. Truly one of the best waterfront hangs in the city. I mean, come for the fire pits and the view, stay for the oysters. And apparently they have crab dip donuts, which is news to me. So I think after the show today, I'm going to check that out. As always, thank you for joining me. Make sure you subscribe, follow, share, and stay tuned for more conversations with the people shaping the hospitality industry across the DMV and beyond. I'm Nikki Nellis, NYCCI, NELLIS, and this has been your Industry Night. Have a delicious week.
Produced by Heartcast Media.